Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today all of Jeffrey Katzenberg's dreams came true. Yes, he was able to save his animation studio, Dreamworks Animation, by finally finding a buyer. And a buyer that Disney could not intimidate out of the deal. Jeffrey Katzenberg, of course, has a long-standing feud with Disney because Michael Eisner did not promote him when Frank Wells tragically passed away and instead hired Michael Ovitz. That led Jeffrey Katzenberg to leave Disney, after he'd helped usher in the Disney Renaissance and start DreamWorks to begin with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, and he was in charge of their animation arm. Then when DreamWorks didn't quite work out, DreamWorks Animation was spun off into its own entity that Jeffrey Katzenberg has been running for years now, and then DreamWorks became more of a production company and a distributor, which went to a couple different studios, was at Disney, and now is dead as a live-action studio, and has become Amblin Partners with Steven Spielberg, also at Universal. So Katzenberg and Spielberg are reunited. But this is a very interesting deal, and there are a couple of details that answer some of the questions that we had yesterday about it when this was, a percolating rumor. All right, so the acquisition price was not $3 billion as had been guessed yesterday, but actually turned out to be $3.8 billion. Then when you factor in the debt that goes along with the deal, DreamWorks Animation gets an estimated value of $4.1 billion, which makes it $0.1 billion more valuable than both Marvel and Lucasfilm, which of course Disney recently acquired. Pixar is still the grand poobah of worth, with a $7.4 billion acquisition back in the day when Disney, made them be purchased. Just if you haven't heard that story really quickly, I love the drama in Hollywood. It's so great. That's one of the reasons I like the new Founder trailer, is that I've never seen a movie depict how aggressive business can be, and that's a nice way to put it. But anyway, Pixar had not wanted to be acquired, but Disney said, because of our deal, we have the rights to your movies, and we're just going to churn out sequels with or without you. So we suggest you join the empire. And Pixar said, okay, but I think it's worked out quite nice for Pixar. And you saw John Lasseter really become the head honcho for animation there in general, now running up both Pixar and Disney Animation Studios. And what's interesting is that Katzenberg is not going to be the John Lasseter of NBC Universal, but he, will actually end up probably working with the man who will be, and that's Chris Meledandri. NBC Universal on their end, even though Katzenberg is staying, and Katzenberg will consult to NBC Universal's business as well, which I think is valuable. Katzenberg, while I think he's made some miscalculations with DreamWorks Animation, let's not forget that he is responsible partially, as I've said before yesterday, it's really him and Howard Ashman. Watch the Waking Sleeping Beauty documentary, and you can see that they're the two gentlemen who brought back Disney Animation. So I think Katzenberg, as I said yesterday again, has worthwhile things to contribute, but I don't think he should be totally in charge. And that's exactly what's happened. Chris Meledandri, who runs Illumination Entertainment, which is incredibly successful. They're the people behind the Despicable Me movies, the Minions spin-off, and then, of course, the Dr. Seuss movies will be coming out big time because Dr. Seuss's widow was so happy with the Lorax. But anyway, so Chris Meledandri will be consulting on DreamWorks, so he really becomes the John Lasseter over there, and I'll be curious to see what the result of that is. John Lasseter, I think, has a very distinct aesthetic. One of you actually tweeted me this morning and said, with the Killing Joke, do you have a problem with the quality of the animation or the aesthetic? And I thought that was a great differentiation to make. And I think it's largely the aesthetic. I think even the animation quality is a bit low, but I think largely the aesthetic is what bothers me. And Chris Meledandri has a very European aesthetic, an edgy aesthetic that I think will go quite well with DreamWorks Animation. So I think this is a good team that DreamWorks, that NBC Universal has assembled. So great story, fantastic. And also, they will now have a better marketing team, hopefully. But I'll be very curious to see how this affects DreamWorks Animation going forward. And the deal should be finalized by the end of the year. So expect big things in DreamWorks Animation and Universal's future. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is about Wolverine 3, and this was a casting announcement that made me so happy that I was like, bring on Wolverine 3. It's great. I'm already into it because they cast Stephen Merchant in Wolverine 3. I mean, that's just so brilliant. Also, Richard E. Grant has been cast. I love this guy as well, as a mad scientist. I was telling a friend about that this morning, and she was like, is Wolverine going to the UK? And I was like, maybe he is. I don't know. Because they haven't announced who Stephen Merchant is playing. But I love Stephen Merchant so much. For instance, he had a guest starring role on The Big Bang Theory for a couple of episodes recently. He's just so funny and brings so much energy to whatever project he's involved in. And also to see him interacting with Wolverine, I just think it's really fantastic and very clever. So while I haven't really enjoyed the Wolverine movies that much, I thought the Wolverine was definitely an improvement on X-Men Origins Wolverine, but I still don't think it's the level a Wolverine movie could and should be. I don't know if this one's going to work out either because it has largely the same creative team as the Wolverine, but now that Stephen Merchant's in it, I'm just really excited for it. So I think that's fantastic casting. But I'm curious, how do you feel about it? Do you think that's a great casting idea, or do you think they're not taking the project seriously enough? I mean, he is a very interesting and unusual choice, which is one of the reasons I like it so much. Now, speaking of unusual choices, Jamie Foxx, it looks like, is going to sign on for the Happytime Murders movie that we discussed a long time ago. This is something Brian Henson has been trying to get off the ground for a while. Basically, it's his version of Roger Rabbit. Now, why is it finally working? Well, he seems to have found a studio, and this will not be affiliated with Disney. Disney acquired the Muppets from Henson, but they didn't acquire just the idea of puppets in general, right? So I guess Brian Henson feels, I got the Henson name, I got the idea, I'm going to do this without you. So it'll be very interesting to see if he can succeed. If I were Disney, I'd be like, But anyway, what he's put together, I think, would be difficult for Disney to influence because Styx Entertainment, the studio, the distributor that's taken it on, it's like a little bit of a maverick studio, and they have to make a name for themselves, and they're very small, and I think that they will really push this movie forward. But I think the other reason this got greenlit is because of Deadpool. I think, everybody wants to make an R-rated movie now. We have the R-rated Killing Joke, animated movie coming out from DC. And also, now this will be R-rated. This Happytime Murders will be R-rated. So while there was adult undertones to Roger Rabbit, a lot of innuendo, this is going to be outrightly R-rated and very adult. So again, if you don't recall the setup, it's called. It takes place in a world. It's called the Happytime Murders. It takes place in a world where instead of toons like in Roger Rabbit, humans live alongside puppets, right? So basically, there was this show called The Happytime Gang, which was like a really fun, a little bit like Death to Smoochie, right? Like that storyline. But in real life, the puppets on The Happytime Gang, this really cheerful kids show, were the stuff of TMZ. So fast forward to like after the show's heyday, and they're getting killed. So it requires this puppet who used to be a detective, who has like a drinking problem apparently and stuff, to go re-team with his old partner, Jamie Foxx, to solve these murders. So, I don't know. I think that it sounds like, I think if you think of it as a Roger Rabbit pitch, it's very enticing. But if you remind anyone about the failure of the Muppets TV show, which also is a world, well, the Muppets have always lived in a world where humans and puppets coexist. But the Muppets TV show that currently airs on ABC has tried very much to be adult, to be behind the scenes. Well, the Muppets again always have been behind the scenes, but with a lot of like Hollywood, inside baseball Hollywood stuff. And I think it's important to point out that movies about Hollywood don't usually do that well. The mainstream moviegoer isn't that interested in what goes on behind the scenes in Hollywood. I mean, there's definitely an audience for that, but I wouldn't call it a big audience. So that's been reflected in the ratings for the Muppets TV show because they made it, I think, a little bit too Hollywood instead of, the Muppets having kind of like being like a theater troupe instead. I think people preferred that. But anyway, if I look at how the Muppets TV show is performing, I would be a little bit more hesitant to make this. Hopefully it won't be that expensive, and the Muppet movies have done pretty well. So I guess I'd have to see what these puppets look like, how dark it gets, and how funny it is. I think Jamie Foxx is a good choice. I think he's always, he's been very funny when he's done comedy. I really liked him in the Horrible Bosses movies. Often he was the best thing in them. So I'd be curious to see how this works out. But it's a good choice. I think he is a good name to put on it. And if they can get other talent of that caliber, the thing might have a chance. But I'm curious, do you have any interest in this? And do you feel are you any more into it in a post-Deadpool world? I would rather just revisit Roger Rabbit, quite frankly. But that's another company. All right, so anyway, those are the 3 stories of the day. I have a great viewer question here, which I really, you guys are really on fire this week with the questions. This is from H. Bergfeld1. And H. Bergfeld1 says, question! Tons of weird, hieroglyphic emojis, which were awesome. So, Grace, what else do you want to see from J.K. Rowling? She has many other books, such as A Casual Vacancy and the Cuckoo's Calling series. She also has other small stories from her Harry Potter universe that could be made into a movie franchise, such as Tale of Beedle the Bars. I personally, and this is where the question gets interesting, want to see a TV show. What do you think of a Netflix Quidditch show about a team? I think it would be very different, a magical-themed TV show centered around sports. That's such a good idea. I would like to know what you think of this and what are some of the other stories you want from her in or out of the wizarding world. I'd like to see at least one of her properties that aren't in the magic world as a movie. Thanks, and I love your show. You are awesome. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. And then lots of exclamation marks. Thank you, H. Bergfeld1. That's a great question. You have a future, perhaps, in television at least. That's great. As for J.K. Rowling, I'm glad you're a fan of her work outside of the wizarding world, but I think that the wizarding world is where her future lies, and I think that's where her legacy lies. And if she wants to write other things occasionally, I believe The Casual Vacancy was recently turned into like a HBO movie or something, but nobody really paid attention to it. So I think if she wants to scratch her creative itch occasionally outside of the wizarding world, that's fine, and I think there's a fan base for that, including H. Bergfeld1. That's all, but I think that's all that it's going to be. As for the wizarding world, the theme parks have worked. The first group of movies obviously worked very well. And if they can get Fantastic Beasts to work, I think a TV show would be a great next step. I mean, that clearly is part of what you need to have if you want to have a authentic cinematic universe these days. You got to have the TV arm. I think both Marvel and DC have been doing that quite well. And I think it would be fantastic to see other cinematic universes move in that direction. And I think your Quidditch sports show is very, very clever. I don't know how they're going to handle the visual effects for that, for a television show, but they're starting to spend more money on Netflix and Amazon, so maybe it might be worth it. I would even be interested in a Dumbledore TV show, perhaps. And that would be a little, I say edgy because, of course, Dumbledore, J.K. Rowling revealed was gay, and maybe Hollywood isn't ready for a gay lead, which would be a shame because it's Dumbledore. I think big audience for that guy, but I think TV would, and I think a Dumbledore TV show wouldn't be too expensive, and people would watch the hell out of that. I mean, that would be amazing. So I think, this is such a good idea. I hope that this is on Warner Brothers' radar. And it never hurts to tweet J.K. Rowling the idea. I think J.K., I don't know about Warner Brothers, but J.K. is very social media active, and I would totally send her this idea, H. Bergfeld1. And I'd send it to her a couple of times because I think she's very savvy. And I think if you can get her creative juices flowing on what a TV show might be, I mean, she's already done theater, right? I think she could be totally into it. Great idea. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm curious, do you guys want to see a Wizarding World TV show? And if so, what do you think? You should tweet your ideas to JK as well. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I think it's so great that you guys are thinking of pitches. That's really awesome. That's very important to do. And this is a great example of a very strong pitch. It's very clever. It's both rooted in its success, but yet fresh, a new idea. And also it's very savvy as to what's going on right now in entertainment. So it's really, really, it's very strong. All right, so anyway, I think that's so great. All right, so anyway, write your thoughts down below. And of course, let me know of any questions or ideas that you might have. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.